Hi, this is Joe Vargas. Welcome to today's episode of Behind the Badge. Today we have the privilege of speaking with retired detective Dan Salcedo. With nearly 3 decades of service with the Orange County Sheriff's Department in California, Dan has investigated hundreds of homicides, encountering some of the darkest sides of humanity. Notably, he was likely the last detective to speak with the notorious serial killer Randy Kraft. Today, Dan will take us behind the scenes of real homicide investigations, shedding light on how the gritty reality differs from what we see in movies and TV shows. He'll also share insights into the tremendous toll this work can take on an investigator and their family. Hello, everyone. This is Joe Vargas with Behind the Badge, and we're lucky enough today to have Dan Salcedo with us, retired homicide investigator from the Orange County Sheriff's Department. We thought it'd be great to have him as a guest because, for a lot of you who aren't familiar with police work, there's a media perception of what a homicide detective does and, solves a case in 24 hours, gets DNA back in just a matter of 6-7 hours, all this stuff. And the reality is that from my experience, homicide investigations are probably some of the most complex, challenging investigations the department can do. But a little bit about yourself, Dan. What year did you start police work?
I started with the Sheriff's Department in January of 1985, worked corrections in the jail system at the Central Men's Jail. Then I went to South Operations Patrol Services in what was then El Toro, now the city of Lake Forest. Then from there, I went to the coastal area, Dana Point and unincorporated Laguna Niguel, the only city down there at the time, which was a contract city, was San Juan Capistrano. Mm-hmm. So everything else was unincorporated. So your area coverage was quite extensive. So I did that. And then I went into an administrative spot in the city of Dana Point in 1989 when they became a city itself and contracted with the Sheriff's Department. I did that for 3 years, then went up to headquarters for another administrative assignment. Did that for another 3 years, tested for promotion to an investigator, passed, and they asked me what assignment I wanted or preferred, and I said homicide. And so in 1996, I went to homicide and stayed there for 14 plus years, then had a brief stint in sex crimes for a little bit, came back to homicide, and fully retired in 2014. And upon my retirement full-time, I was asked to be the sheriff's representative on a newly formed unit called Cold Case Homicide Team. And it was comprised by the DA's office, Fullerton PD, Santa Ana PD Sheriff's Department. And what we did on the Cold Case Task Force is look at all unsolved cases for the county itself. And preferably, we stayed with sheriff cases. So we had pretty good success with solving quite a few cold cases. My last solve was a case in 1976, a body dump behind the El Toro Marine Base, where I met with the FBI team that solved the Golden State Killer murders. I met up with them, and thank God everything fell into place, because what they did at the autopsy of Leslie Harris is they extracted his sexual assault kit from her at the autopsy in 1976, and it was preserved so well, we still had some seminal fluid that was left over to be identified into DNA database. So when I worked with the FBI task force, we went up and uploaded for forensic genealogy exams, and we got a hit. Mm-hmm. And I made an arrest in May of 2019 in New Orleans area. And he was extradited back to Orange County for her murder. So
that was interesting. I mean, how many years passed from the commission of the crime till the arrest?
1976 was the murder, so about 37 years.
I want to get back to this case a little bit, because you brought it up. The changes in technology between when you first started working homicide and what it looks like today have been dramatic.
Oh, amazing. Back in the day, the guys had either an eyewitness or a fingerprint. There was no DNA. There were no cell phones. There were no video cameras, Ring doorbells, laptops, credit cards you can track. So literally, if you didn't have an eyewitness, you didn't have a fingerprint, it was you were hoping and praying that someone is going to come forward, or you got a lucky break. And everything was hand searched. So when I went back in the files throughout the years, especially on cold cases, the cold case books were just put together with typewritten reports, and you can only imagine how long it took those guys to write typewritten reports to put in these files. You had old Polaroid photographs. You had minimal information to gather because there was such few information on a person. You had a driver's license, you had a home address and work address. You had to hand search plate numbers on cars. That's how, mind-boggling it was back in the day. It was so archaic. But now, we're somewhat spoiled because you have all the technology of cell phones, pinging cell phones, tracking credit cards, license plate readers, of course, DNA, Ring doorbells, video surveillance cameras all over the place, which is, thank God we do have that. So it's much easier, but putting the case itself is just as difficult because you have to go from beginning when you get that phone call, usually in the middle of the night, to respond to a particular scene, to adjudication. There's a lot of work that has to be done. Just like you mentioned, it's not like the Hollywood perception of, you show up to a scene and then 2 commercials later, you're in court, and a next commercial later, it's over.
Let's talk about that a little bit. The public expectation is based a lot upon what they see on TV, all these glamorous looking detectives running around, with their, guns in the wrong position and, wearing their badges on their belts and everything else. The reality is that in my experience, the detectives in the homicide division tended to be, if you lack for better words, the most anal people.
Yeah, you had to be because you had high expectations to put the case together. And then you had a district attorney that, at least for the sheriff's department, we had vertical DAs that we were assigned to specific cases for us. So you wanted to present a really good case to them, of course, because it was an honor to work homicide because you were doing it for the victims and you're doing it for the victims' families. So you wanted to do the best job you could. So you didn't disappoint them, or you wanted to make sure the DA got a really good case put together, but you really found out what kind of case you put together when you went to court, sat at the counsel table, because now you're seeing a defense attorney go over your case and nitpick or see and really put people on the stand or yourself on the stand if you didn't do a good job. So when I would tell guys who were newer into the detail is, you're going to find out what kind of case, strong case, weak case, or misguided case when you go to court, because everything you did or didn't do, right or wrong, is going to come out. So to avoid all that, do the best job you can when you present that case, and hopefully you get a good adjudication with a conviction. But yeah, you got to make sure all your reports are well written. Everything makes sense. Everything is submitted for forensic review. Everything is discovered to the DA, because if it's not, you can get a mistrial or you can get a mishandling of evidence, as you see that's been coming up recently in the media. So everything you want to do, you had to be anal just to make sure everything was presented as best you could.
Yeah. And you brought up something about, what you see in the media about some of these mistrials or people that are being adjudicated or retried and everything else like that. And a lot of that is just, it seems like Monday morning quarterbacking, come back. You have the time, you have the effort, and you go see, was every T crossed, was every I dotted.
Right. Yeah, you have to. And your partner on the case, because you had a specific primary case agent and then your partner, so the co-case agent. So you would review each other's work to make sure everything was good. The DA would hopefully read all the reports, because I've been put on the stand a couple times where, you're just so tired sometimes. You're up for 2.5, 3 days. People don't realize that too, from the time of your call out, which again is usually in the middle of the night, till you have no idea when you're going to be done. You may not be home for days, and you're expected to have your A game at all times, especially during the course of the interview. And for me, the interview, I think, was one of the most important things you had to do correctly on a case, because most times you only get one chance at interviewing a homicide suspect. If they don't waive Miranda, then you're stuck. You really can't do anything now. You have to depend on witnesses and forensic technology, just legwork. But if you can sit down with somebody who's willing to talk to you like we are right now, you got a one shot to do it. Because once they're taken to jail and they retain counsel, you really can't talk to them anymore. So you had being, you could be up for 24 hours and then you get a phone call that, hey, the guy you've been looking for is being detained. Now it's interview time and you're dead tired and you got to sit in a room or a patrol car or an office or a house and remember everything you need to ask this guy and do it in one shot. So that was where really the A game
And it's interesting because a lot of these interviews, first of all, for lack of a better word, they require a huge amount of emotional intelligence. How you interview somebody who, for all intents and purposes, shouldn't be talking to you.
yeah, thank God they do. Cause I found out through the years, the more sophisticated a criminal thought he was, those are the people that wanted to talk to you because they wanted to explain their way out of it, usually lie their way out of it. And they thought, I'm smarter than this detective. So I'm going to come up with a story or 10 stories that he's going to just buy off and he's going to kick me loose because I sold a great story to these homicide guys that really don't know what they're doing. Those are the guys I wanted to talk to. It was the person that's very inexperienced because the first thing they're going to do is I shouldn't probably be talking to the police and they're going to go, so I can get a lawyer. And again, the other Hollywood perception is of homicide suspects is there's a full moon outside and they go out on killing sprees and stuff. Most homicide suspects are normal people. They either just snapped because their emotions took over, narcotics, alcohol, greed, revenge, and most of the people I handled probably 400 plus death investigations. And with that, a lot of interviews. And I could say a good percentage of the people I interviewed for death investigations are just normal people like we are that just snapped, made a really bad decision that day.
Well, isn't it true? In most cases, the victim and suspects are known to each other.
99% of the time. And there are unfortunately some times where the victim had a very big role in their own death because of the people they hung out with, who they were dealing with, what they had done. And the suspect, unfortunately took out their aggression on their wife, the girlfriend, love interest, boyfriends, it's always sex and money. It seems to be the big motivating factor behind most murders. And again, when you sit down with these guys, you need to know your case. You need to know everything you have to get out in one interview about from the time how the body was found to everything that transpired in between. You need to know that off the top of your head to ask these guys again, because after being up so long or just having so many things on your plate, you might forget a couple things. And then what would bother me a lot is afterwards when you're reviewing the case in your mind or in paperwork, you're like, why didn't I ask him that? Or I should have asked him that. But you got so many things going on, you just forget. But most of the time you got a strong case anyways. So,
and in reality, there is a lead investigator, but it's not just the lone wolf. It's a whole team behind you.
Whole team. And the sheriff's department, we had a great bunch of guys. Everybody knew their assignment and everybody took care of business.
And that includes the forensics portion of that as well.
Forensic, we probably, not to brag about the sheriff's crime team, our crime lab, but they are probably one of the best in the nation. We worked hand in hand with them. Everything we submitted, they went above and beyond on collection, photography, analysis, reporting back, court testimony. They were the best. We were completely spoiled by Orange County Crime Lab, along with the coroner's office. The coroner's office, they had a great staff.
You talked about sometimes you're motivated by the victim's family. There's a huge emotional attachment that goes along with that, especially when you're talking about an innocent victim of a crime.
Huge. When I have taught classes or I do seminars, I tell people one of the hardest jobs for me, it wasn't really the call out and going to a crime scene. It was death notifications,
Right.
because you don't know who these people are. So you're literally knocking on a door or making a phone call. And usually when a homicide detective's calling your house at 4 a.m, it's not good news. So you have to explain to them, hey, I need to come over and talk to you. So you have two things to do. You have to get an interview along with a death notification. So you have to kind of read the room to see what do I do first, because your loved one's missing and that they're now deceased, but you also have to interview the reporting party, because there is a chance the reporting party is your suspect.
Mhm.
So you have to be very delicate and kind of work your way through that to see what they tell you. Are they going to alibi themselves out, or is everything that they're telling you make sense? Along with now you have to give them a death notification and all. And I just did not like that a lot.
Oh no, that's got to
I
be just
mean,
emotionally draining.
yeah,
And you have to keep working after you do all that.
sure do. And I still have a lot of attachments with my victims' families. I get Christmas cards. They'll text me every once in a while, ask me how I'm doing, how they just keep in touch with me, because you form a very, very strong bond with your victims' families, because you're with them from the time a murder happens to adjudication. Sometimes it's 3 to 5 years. So you're staying in touch with these families, trying to keep them up to speed on what's going on with the court, what's going to happen next, what you may be needed in court for, progress of the case. And some of the best rewards you get at the end of a case is a guilty verdict and a big hug from the victims' families. I mean, to me, that was the ultimate reward, is being able to talk with the victims' families after a successful verdict, and just a relief from both of us.
There's this perception sometimes of the public is that, that we have low value and high value victims, children being high value and trying to adjudicate them, low value, a gang member. But, my experience has been you guys just want to catch the bad guy.
Yeah, we got to put the puzzle together, because gang member, child, wife, husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever it may be, they're still a murder victim. My motivation is making sure somebody didn't get away with it. And again, the public perception of a gang member or a robbery suspect who got shot and killed, you still have to treat them as victims, because they're human beings. And there's a family out there that's going to miss them and cared for them. So you still had a job to do. You couldn't really neglect doing everything you could to solve the murder, because your motivation, again, is getting somebody off the street who did this and making sure that somebody who thinks they got away with it isn't.
Mm-hmm. You've said you've done over 400 cases. And what kind of, any of them really stand out to you? I mean, we talked about the cold case from 1976, and the suspect had been living his life and,
Yeah, he was 66 years old when we arrested him. He was an associate pastor in a church in Plaquemine Parish, Louisiana. By all accounts, after there was a murder, there's a previous incident in the city of Tustin that he committed. But all the neighbors, everybody, the best guy ever. When I interviewed him, he was just like sitting across from your uncle, having a conversation. Very personable, but whatever demons he had, 37 years later, certainly took over. But his name was Eddie Lee Anderson. And I don't know if it bothered him that he had done this. I don't know if he thought about it. He denied it to me, which was just as good as a confession. I don't know if he would have gone through his whole life not telling anybody about this. His wife didn't know about it. His ex-wife didn't know about it. His kids certainly didn't know about it. Nobody he had any contact with knew that he had
apparently
done this
that pattern of behavior for some reason just stopped with, he had one incident and then the actual homicide.
Yeah, it's strange, just like Golden State Killer. You think somebody who kills once for no apparent reason, like Leslie Harris, which is dumped nude behind the Marine base, that it was a thrill kill, just to see what it felt like to kill somebody. And this person is not going to stop. Randy Kraft, perfect example. A Golden State Killer, Bonnet, all these serial killers, You know, he, and the new murder, I just can't remember, up in New York, Long Island.
Oh, yes.
You know, if you find one murder victim and you believe this person is responsible for it, you have to assume there's a lot of others. Now you got to start connecting the dots like Kraft. My guy, since I had that case in 2019 and have since retired from doing cold cases, I haven't learned that any others have come up. He died of COVID in, I believe, 2020 in the Orange County Jail prior to trial. So I would have liked to have had him go to trial because he might have told his attorney, now that I'm in custody and there's probably no chance of me getting out, I need to tell you about some others. That would have been, you know, something I wish would have happened.
He brought up a couple of names here, William Bond and Randy Kraft. There was a period of time where Orange and, Southern California basically was inundated with serial killers.
It was crazy back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, partially through the 80s, one of a big mode of transportation was hitchhiking. And that's where Randy Kraft made his game. I think very high percentage of his victims were hitchhikers that the side of the road, bus stops, just offering a ride. He was a 5'6", very frail looking person when this all started. I think his first murder was in 1971, 72. Kraft was born at 45. So he was, less than 30 years old, very intelligent, was in the U.S. Air Force, I believe, Claremont College. So he was intellectually very highly up there as being able to function. And when he was caught on a car stop in 1983, literally right down the street from here on the I-5 freeway, the CHP stopped a car that was driving erratically. They thought it's a drunk driver. Lo and behold, it's a guy named Randy Kraft driving the car. He is intoxicated. In the front passenger seat is a person they believe to be passed out. There's beer cans on the floor. And this person was a Marine from El Toro, and he was deceased. So the CHP called Sheriff's Homicide because it was our jurisdiction. They came out and they're thinking, could this be the guy? He had dumped about 60 bodies throughout Southern California, Michigan, and Oregon throughout the years. So you had Bonin, you had who's the serial killer, you had Bundy, you had all these serial killers that were prevalent in the 70s for some reason. And Randy Kraft's method of getting these guys in his car was to offer them a ride and offer them a cold drink, usually alcohol with some type of narcotic in it. These guys would soon pass out, have no idea what was going to unfortunately then happen to them. He mutilated, tortured, sexually abused, asphyxiated, and bludgeoned to death almost all of his victims. So 60 plus victims.
It's kind of interesting because you hear about names like Jeffrey Dahmer and some of them make the name out there, but you'd say Randy Kraft, and a lot of people have no idea who that is.
They don't. There's a book called Angel of Darkness that is very, very well written, which chronicles Kraft from beginning to end. And you would never, ever suspect when you see Randy Kraft's picture that he was good for 60 plus murders, just like Golden State Killer D'Angelo. Never suspect this
Yep.
old
Former cop.
Living in in peace and serenity up in Northern California was the Golden State Killer. And Randy Kraft, in the trunk of his car, they discovered a scorecard. And what he would do is hyphenate or put initials next to on the sheet, the cardboard sheet. And when our homicide team, Jim Sidebotham and all the other sheriff's homicide investigators would start to able to pinpoint what Kraft had indicated on the scorecard, it was attributed to a victim. So he picked up an El Toro Marine in jeans, he would have like ETJ, El Toro jeans. And it was for him, I think it was a memento so he could remember all this stuff as a way to, relive the crime at a later time.
At your recommendation, I actually, started reading that Angel of Darkness. It's dark. I mean, you will look at the types of murders, the way he did them, and just the fact that, the guy has no soul, no conscience.
Extremely sadistic.
Mhm. And, even as, as experienced as I am, the man was evil.
If there's a definition, or if you want to open a dictionary to say serial killer / evil, Kraft's your guy. And I went to interview him.
So you've actually spoken with him.
I went up to San Quentin in, I believe it's 2012, 2013. We went up to Northern California on another murder case, the Christopher Smith case. And told my partner, Don Vogt, I said, on our way back, we're going to go to San Quentin and we're going to talk to Randy Kraft. Because through the years, I've always looked into the Kraft cases for the unsolved parts where we've had body dumps, John Does, who were either identified at a later time or just had no attachment to who was responsible. And they all had the markings of Randy Kraft. So when I went up there, I didn't interview because Kraft has been on death row since 1989. And he just brings up appeals and fires his attorneys. The state allows this to happen. The courts allow this to happen. So when you're ready to go to trial, maybe reopen this case, or the court's going to look at it, Kraft gets rid of his attorney. Now a new attorney comes in with another 500,000 pages of discovery to look at. So he just extends this and extends it. And so he's still under appeal on a lot of his cases. So I didn't want to go up there and, have a court decision, the Salcedo, California State Court decision, because I interviewed him illegally. So I talked to him. I just wanted to talk to him about some missing persons that we have had that were probably missing because of Kraft. So I just wanted to open up a new chapter of investigation on gleaning on the old stuff. And he's a very unpleasant man. He grew up, born and raised in Orange County. I actually was his module deputy at the jail, and I tried to talk to him about that. He had put nothing to do with that. I just tried to small talk with him. He didn't want anything to do with that. He had some very choice words for Jim Sidebotham and Brian Brown, who's one of the prosecutors on the case. Still remembers them very well, had some choice words that he wanted me to go back and tell them. And the man is literally in his cell 23 and a half hours a day. And you would think just coming out to be out in fresh air in another part of the prison to sit and talk with me and Don would have had him at least somewhat pleasant. He was a very, very unpleasant. I told him, you know what? Your punishment is just the way you are right now. You're going to die just being like this. If you have anything in your heart, here's my business card. Give me a call. I'll come right back up here if you ever want to talk to me about anything. Never heard from him. He's still alive. He's now 79 years old. Been on death row since 1989, supported by the state. And evil, like you said.
And he's never admitted any fault at all.
Admitted nothing. When I was talking with him, he said he was literally railroaded by the sheriff's department. And so having a dead Marine in your front seat, we planted that person, how that person get there. And that's when he went off on his tangents. And I, again, didn't want to bring up old cases. So I just kind of let it slide. But he's admitted to nothing. And all the evidence, he had Polaroid pictures of men that were presumably either asleep, passed out, or dead, that were either in his car. The pictures were, I believe, at his house and in his car. And a lot of these, which turned out to be crime scenes, were taken at his house. So there is and this is before DNA. But now with new technology, I think they're reopening some old cases to see if it can be attributed to Kraft. But yeah, back in the day, 70s, if you were a hitchhiker and you got home or wherever you were going alive, I think you should be very thankful 40 years later that you actually didn't get picked up by Bonin or Kraft or Bunty or all these other guys.
Any of your old cases that you can think of that you still sit there and gosh, you know what? I wish we could have solved this one. Or,
I don't know exactly how many homicides I handled after 16 years, probably close to 100. had two unsolved, and they do bother me. One was a very innocent victim in the city of Stanton, Paul Chiriboga, just sitting in his car, waiting for his cousins and brother to come out of a party. And unfortunately, this party was in the middle of Crow Village in Stanton, a very gang-infested neighborhood. Two guys walked up on his car, shot him in the head for no reason, absolutely no reason at all. And one of the bullets exited Paul's head and went into Porfirio Medina's, the person I identified as the suspect. Went into that kid's chest. He went off, wouldn't talk. Eventually kind of give us some information to tell us who it was. Medina, we believe, has been in Mexico since that murder. I think that happened in 2006. So he's been in Mexico, as far as I know, ever since. I had a tight bond with his family, the victim's family, and it just broke my heart to have to tell the mom that he's probably in Mexico. We really have not a great police relationship with Mexico. They let their guys cross the border, and it is what it is. If they can try to find somebody, they will. They don't have fingerprint systems like we do to say, my name is Joe Vargas. No, it's not. It's Porfirio Medina. By the way, you're wanted in California for a murder. They don't do that. They don't have that. So I told her, the karma's going to be the only way that, payback's going to come back to Medina. But that one bothers me because he hasn't been caught. Other ones that stand out are just, Runyon stands out because it was such a big investigation. But I've had.
Now, for the people that are listening, Samantha Runyon, was 5 years old.
Yes.
She was 5 years old. She was kidnapped, molested, and killed, and her body dumped along the Ortega Highway here in Orange County.
Yes, 2002. And Alejandro Avila was our eventual suspect. Yeah, big case, a lot of media attention. So that comes to light because there was a lot of legwork. I was on a part of a team that was just specifically taken off Sheriff's Department active cases and put on the Runyon Task Force. So we worked on nothing but that case for close to a year, just getting all the discovery and everything, all the interviews, everything we can do that the DA wanted done. There was a set group of folks, me included, to get that done.
I mean, you have to do this because, these are all potential death penalty cases, and they are going to be appealed, and they're going to look for any little mistake that you guys made during the whole process.
100%. Yeah, that's why, like you said, you have to be very anal. You have to take, I try to take the cases personal, because to me, if I was assigned a homicide as a primary case agent, I didn't want to disappoint anybody, including myself. I wanted to make sure that I had a suspect that I was going to eventually be able to talk to and put handcuffs on, walk him over to the jail, and then say, I'll see you in court. And hopefully you get a guilty verdict. Yeah, there's other cases. There's a guy named Gregory Pisarchik, who was brutally murdered, a person in unincorporated Tustin. That stands out just because of the brutality of what he did to the victim. Nick Vovos was another case in Lake Forest right down the street, where he killed a lady who had let his girlfriend into her house out of the kindness of her heart to help her out. And his payback was to kill her, buried her up in a hand-dug grave up in San Bernardino, then went off on a Bonnie and Clyde car chase and shootout in Colorado. And he's now in Colorado for attempt murder on several police officers. When that case is terminated, he'll be back here to serve life. So those cases stand out because I really, really relish putting the puzzle together. That's one of the best parts about homicide is putting that puzzle together. The more convoluted it was, the more I liked it.
Well, the challenge itself and trying to get all the pieces put together. Cop shows, do you watch any?
I do not. I've done a couple episodes of Real Murders of Orange County, and I don't even watch those. I get phone calls from guys that have seen me. People have stopped me and said, "Hey, you were I just saw you on TV," or my friends will show me screenshots from the TV. I don't really watch them because
I start watching these Netflix episodes where they're trying to second guess. Most recently, the Lacey Peterson case with Scott Peterson. They're clutching at straws here, but they're just trying to I mean, let's face it, Lacey Peterson was probably one of the most media frenzied homicide cases I've ever seen, let alone that. And they're just trying to make money off
That's
that
all it
frenzy.
is. Yeah. And the media, when I'm doing a show next week, as a matter of fact, they just come up with different titles. And I've done, for TV shows, I've done the same murder like 4 or 5 times. And they just rename the new taping something different, like killer couple, snapped, upset, somebody's, I don't know what the name of this new show coming up that I'm doing next week is, but they just rehash the same murder, give it a new title, do some new interviews, some new tapings, and put it together. Boom, it's on TV, because I didn't realize how much fascination there is with police shows.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, true crime broadcasts are probably, one of the main ones that people listen to, and people get involved and really engaged with what's happening. They're like you. They want to see the puzzle solved and how did they do it and everything else. And it's sad, but it's one of those things that it's like the train wreck at the side of the road. You turn and look.
Yeah, you get into it, especially when there's a docuseries that has several parts to it, because you can't wait for the next episode to see how did it turn out. So I would love for the BD to pick up something like Randy Kraft. They've done Golden State Killer, Bundy. I don't know if they've done Bonin.
Now, William Bonin was the freeway killer.
Freeway Killer. Same time, same period. They always thought, was Bonin good for Kraft's murders? Were Kraft's good for Bonin's murders? Because there were so many going on. And, people need to know, like Angel Darkness, and people can read that book to see how sadistic some murder suspects are, and how easy it is for you to wake up in the morning thinking you're going to have a good day and end up being a murder victim.
I think for the general public, one of the things I found during my police career, people just don't know how many truly evil, dangerous people there are out there.
Yeah, it's just, if you're not aware, especially now with cameras, I mean, I think suspects are a little bit more wary, but you see all these home invasion robberies going all over the state, these tourist suspects coming in and doing their stuff and going home and making millions and millions of dollars off of these. You're just not really aware that there's somebody out there that wants to deprive you of your properties, your car, your wallet, your credit cards, and any opportunity they can do it, they do it, and you don't realize it until you go to the bank or you don't have any money. There's a bunch of murders that I'm sure my murder victim started off the day, thinking it was a good day, and it was totally unaware that something really bad was going to happen later on. And it usually, again, like you insinuated, it has to do with somebody they knew.
Mm-hmm. Do you miss it?
I don't miss the call outs. I don't miss, and the other thing people don't really realize is a lot of times if I went out to dinner with my family or friends or neighbors, I would drive separate, because if the phone rang, then people have told me you should write a book that says when the phone rings, because phone rings, it wasn't good news, usually at middle of the night, because if I got a call out, I had to go. And they didn't get that part of, what do you mean you have to go right now? Well, there's a murder victim and their crime scene, and I have to go. Well, you didn't finish dinner. Or I'd be in an Angel game or a Duck game, and I'd go, hey, I got to return this phone call. I'll be right back. Hey, guys, I got to go. Where are you going? I got a call out. Where are you going? To work. I don't miss that part, especially the 3 a.m. murder phone call, and then trying to get your mind right of, let's wake up. You got to get all the information. Where am I going? Is there a suspect in custody? Because now you have Miranda and issues. You have detainment issues. You have crime scene. You have to think, okay, we put a broadcast out there, a teletype. Do we know who the victim is? Do we have a potential suspect? All things are just going through your mind. And the more you work homicides, within 2 minutes, your mind is just ripping.
You're ticking all the boxes.
Yep. Trying to think, okay, was this done? Was this done? Now you're on the phone making phone calls, trying to take notes. This is what they told me. This is where I need to go. I'm putting down the time I got the call, time I'm leaving the house, where I got to the scene, everybody I need to talk to. That's the part people don't realize is no matter where you are, what you're doing, phone rings, you got to go. You have a job. It's your job.
And let's face it, that's stressful to your family too.
Yeah, there's a lot of times I was at a family party when I got a call out and said, "Hey guys, have a great time. Please lock up the house after you're done, but I got to go to work."
All
And my mom just, mijo, where do you mean you have to go to work? Well, sorry, Mom, I have to go to work. When are you going to be home? And
someday.
you never had an answer. It's like usually a murder call out was minimally 14 plus hours.
I can recall detectives sleeping anywhere they could find a spot just to catch a few hours.
Oh God, that was food and sleep. That's, sometimes you just like, give me just 5 minutes. Then just when you think you're going home, you get a call from like a watch commander or a citizen calling in. I think, were you looking for this, or I have some information? Okay, let's go. We now have to drive to, we're in Lake Forest. We have to drive to Stanton to go get some information. It's like new guys in the detail. Their first call out. That's when it was a very rude awakening, because now you're dead tired. You got all this information. You're trying to get this puzzle solved. Now you have to go back. And just like you alluded to on TV, from commercial to commercial, the case is already light years ahead. Well, now you get to come back to the office, book evidence, and then write search warrants. So, search warrants take, as 3, 4, 5 hours to write. So you got a team of guys just standing by to go hit a house or wherever it may be.
Well, and there's a lot of hurry up and wait.
A ton of hurry up and wait. You got to wait for the coroner. You have to wait for the crime scene techs. But in the meantime, again, your mind is just going 100 miles an hour thinking, okay. And my motto was always, you find out why, you're going to find out who. If you can find out the motive, you're going to find out who's responsible. What money, revenge, spurned relationships. And once you talk, and the other important thing was always the informant on the case is, well, why does that person know there's a dead body in that house? Is it something that they should have privilege to because they live there, or they just, a lot of times you'll get like an ex-husband saying, and thank God for cell phone technology, but you would get husbands, and I've had cases like this is, I just have a weird feeling my wife, and she's not, something happened to her. Okay. So why do you get this feeling? I drove by her house. I never go by her house, but today I went by her house, and just weird. The curtains weren't open. Screen door was shut. It's not like that. So I just want to let you guys know, can you go check on her? And, you find a decedent. It's like, well, how did this guy have this great hunch that his wife is dead? And then you do cell phone call history and pings, and, from the cell site towers he's hitting. But his explanation is, I just happened to drop by. So his alibi for being there is, but, he shouldn't have been there at 2 a.m. when the coroner estimates the time of death.
Well, that's one of those things. Everybody's a suspect until they're not.
Yep. And I would have to tell people, just like you said, sorry, but I get to interview you, and you need to come down the station or sit in this car, even though they were extremely cooperative. Some of my main suspects were very cooperative, because they just wanted you to get that ease of them. Okay, couldn't be this guy, because he sat in the car with me. He answered all these questions. He doesn't look like a murderer. When you get the look of somebody, how did that guy kill somebody? Just a regular person or a female. The more cooperative I think they thought they would come across, is the less suspicion you would have on them.
Well, Dan, you know what? First of all, thank you for your years of service. And this is one of the most difficult details to work in a department, but let's face it, it's worthwhile.
Extremely worthwhile. Yeah.
I mean, you're arresting the worst of the worst, the baddest of the baddest. And these guys get put away for a long time.
They do. Life or death. That sentence, which they've fortunately been all commuted.
In name only.
Exactly. And I think they're getting moved out of San Quentin as we speak to other facilities. But Extremely rewarding. I'm glad when they asked me what detail I wanted to go to, I said homicide. And I actually was extremely thankful when I got that assignment. Never wanted to leave. Didn't really want to promote.
I do find that people who work that detail, it's hard to get them to try to move because there's a lot of reward and a lot of value to what they do.
Yeah, there's a big camaraderie. I still hang out with a lot of the guys I used to work with over the years. Still talk to a lot of them via text or phone. Even though they moved out of state, we still stay in touch. And there's just like firemen or any other tight-knit profession, you get a brotherhood. We're all, any police officer, fireman, there's a brotherhood, but there's really tight brotherhood when you're a homicide detective and you meet another homicide detective from another police department or sheriff's department. You instantly have that connection and you become friends. And I have a lot of friends that I still do things with or talk with from other agencies. And it was all because of the homicide brotherhood.
Well, and again, Dan, thank you for your service. And we look forward to talking to you again here on Behind the Badge.
Thank you. I appreciate the invite.
Okay, thank you.